Okay, so that wine glass file that we were using, you can close and you don't need to save that. There's some demos on using transformation. In Photoshop, let's make a new document just to practice something. So we can come over to the Create New tab over here or do a File New. Doesn't really matter. The default Photoshop size, which you may see down here, is a 5:7 at 300 dpi, or you can go into Photo or Print and see these options also. We're just going to demo. It doesn't really matter what you pick, but I'm going to go with this 7:5 at 300 dpi. So this is a high-res file, 300 dots per inch. All right. We're just going to demo the Marquee tools, which we've been using with marching ants, but I want to show you how they work with filling also. So switch to the rectangular Marquee, and we're going to make a rectangle of any size or shape. We're going to have our marching ants in it. And if we were to take the brush tool, which is letter B, that's a shortcut that gets you to your brush tool. Before we use it, let's see what our foreground color is. So go down to the bottom, and mine happens to be like a, I don't know what color, very light. So I'm going to switch mine to just be some brighter color that we can actually see. And with the brush tool, I can show you how brushing outside the lines has no effect because it's only staying inside of my pixels. So whenever you make a selection, the next thing you do is either targeting, it's staying inside of those selection pixels, or you're targeting the pixels underneath it. So that would be one way to fill this with the foreground color, but that's really the long way and the wrong way. Your foreground color, if you want to fill your selection with that, hold Option and Delete, and it fills fully with your foreground color. So you're not coloring in maybe missing pieces. If you want to fill it with your background color, right now my background color is white, so it'll just look different, but Command Delete fills it with your background color. Option Delete is foreground, Command Delete is background color fill. Let's deselect, Command D, go back to your rectangular Marquee tool, and look up in your top options. The first option should be the one that's selected, which is the make a new selection. We're not subtracting from or anything else. And then we have the feather option. Let's make this 20 pixels. Draw out your rectangle and do an Option Delete to fill it. Because we told it to feather by 20 pixels, it kind of gives the look of rounded edges, but it's only because it's going from a full hard-edged, whatever your foreground color is, and it's feathering to transparent or nothing over the course of 20 pixels, because that's what we set it up to be. So if we changed our feathering to be 10 pixels, and we drew out another one, and Option Delete filled it, you can see it's not quite as dramatic. That change happens over the course of 10 pixels. Another thing we can do, let's switch to our elliptical Marquee. Make sure that we're at a 0 feather, and we're going to turn off this anti-aliasing checkbox. So 0 feather, no anti-aliasing. Make an oval or a perfect circle by holding Shift, and then fill it with your foreground color, Option Delete. Now I want you to zoom in and look at the edges of this. And perhaps, if you want, turn off your selection tool, but if you zoom in, this is what a circle looks like up close when anti-aliasing is turned off. What anti-aliasing does, when it's turned off, every pixel, can you guys see my grid on here, or zoom in enough that you can see it on your own? See all these squares of pixels? They can only be filled with one color. So this edge that should be rounded can't be half pink and half white. It doesn't work that way. So it has to do a hard edge of the color versus the white. So from a distance, it looks relatively okay. Here it is. Now I'm going to draw a circle again, but I'm going to turn on anti-aliasing, and I'm going to draw one right next to it. I'm going to hold the Shift key so that I get the perfect circle, and I'm going to fill it, Option delete, and I'm going to zoom in on this edge. This is what anti-aliasing looks like. It understands that a pixel has to be a full color, but it takes your original color and then does lighter shades of it to give it a visual look of being rounder and nicer. So anti-aliasing should be checked on and left on unless for some reason you want these perfect hard edges. So again, when we look at it at full size without a selection, they both look fairly close. I mean, they both look clean, but as we zoom in on the edges, we start to see a pretty big difference, between these two edges, how they actually appear. All right, let's start with a clean plate here again. So we can always go Window, History, and then in our history window, we can revert all the way back to the first step where we had a new blank image. And we are going to use those selection tools to build a house. First thing we're going to do is go back to the rectangle marquee tool. And we're going to take away the feathering. It's going to be a 0 feathering. And we're going to make a rectangle that's going to be the shape of our original house. Now we want to add a chimney to it, but we want to add to the selection. We want our marching ants to go up and around the chimney. So while we want to add to it, we're going to hold the Shift key and we're going to drag out another rectangle up here like a chimney. And when we let go, it's just going to add that to our selection. So the marching ants are going to bump out and around it. So holding the Shift key while you do that adds to your selection. To subtract from it, so to knock out some windows and a door, any guess what key we're going to hold?
Option.
Yep. Option, we get the minus sign, so we're taking away a window, taking away a window, and taking away a door. So now the part that's actually selected is inside of the marching ants and excluding those windows. So when we fill it, Option delete, that's the result we get and that we expect to get. Our selection minus those three things. So this is important when you're making a selection of a thing. Maybe there's something inside it that you don't want. By holding a keyboard, you can take away from your selection and not include that when you're making a selection. All right, the last thing I want to show you is making a donut, basically, and how keyboard shortcuts act differently depending on when you push them and when you're using them. So go back to your history window and back up to your clean start again. We're going to switch to the elliptical marquee. And we're going to start in the center of our document, and we're going to hold Shift, Option, and drag. Shift is going to make a perfect circle. Option is going to make it from the inside out. So Shift, Option, drag. Draw out a circle. And there's our marquee. Shift, Option, drag. Eyeball up, go back to the center of the circle, as close as you think you are. And we want to be in subtract mode to make this donut. So we're going to hold Option and we're going to start to drag, and that's going to take away from our selection. Now keep your mouse down but let go of your Option button, so we're no longer in take away mode. Now when we hit it again, it centers it perfectly. It goes back to that mode and we can continue dragging out. If we hold shift, it's going to be a perfect circle. When we get it where we want it, we let go of our mouse and then our keyboard, and we can fill it, and we've made like a donut. So the first time we held Option and drag, it was in the takeaway mode. We let go of the Option key, we hit it again, and it's back in its, okay, I understand you want to be centered and go from the middle out. So it behaves in two different ways.